Morning. Come on down. I'm not the first person. Come on, Tom. We're ready. You good?
Good morning and welcome. I'm Michael Romangino, Superintendent of Schools in Cliffside Park. On behalf of the Cliffside Park school community, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Governor Murphy to the Cliffside Park School District. As reported, Cliffside Park has experienced a 19.2% growth in student attendance since 2010. This equates to over 500 new students to our district. For this reason, it gives me great pleasure to extend my thanks to the governor and legislators for addressing the inequity in school funding, something which has been long overdue. Cliffside Park will be receiving approximately $1 million in additional state aid, which will directly benefit many of our student needs. An additional media specialist in our elementary schools, additional staffing in our middle school to address class sizes, special education tuitions, and supplementary staffing programs for our increasing ESL population across our district. On behalf of our entire school community, especially our deserving students, I again thank everyone who worked to provide this funding. At this time, I would like to introduce a great supporter of our schools, the Mayor of Cliffside Park, Mr. Thomas Calabres.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. On behalf of the Borough of Cliffside Park, I want to thank everyone for coming here today to this important bill signing. I want to acknowledge Senate President Sweeney, Speaker Coughlin, our Bergen County Legislative Delegation. If I leave someone out, guys, it's the list they gave me, I'm sorry. Okay. Executive Jim Tedesco, Freeholder Tracy Zur, Freeholder Steve Tonelli, Elmwood Park Councilman Dan Golobeck, Elmwood Park Councilman Joe Dombrowski, Hasbrook Heights Councilman Chris Hillman, Little Ferry Mayor Maura Raguso, and our senator in our district, Senator Paul Sarlo, Assemblywoman Lisa Swain, Senator Joe Lagana, Assemblyman Chris Tully, Assemblyman Gary Scher, Senator Teresa Ruiz, Assembly Majority Leader Lou Greenwald, activist Andrea Katz, and activist Jennifer Cavarella, and of course my nephew Clinton, who's here, and he's, believe me, he's doing a great job, and he's going to be a very big hand to us, believe me. Thank you. I am thrilled that Cliffside Park was selected by our governor as the site for this historic bill signing. The schools are the center of our community, and this legislation will only help improve the already excellent education being provided to our children. This legislation will increase school aid for our town by over $1 million and modernize the school funding formula for all residents of New Jersey. I would like to thank the legislative sponsors and the leaders for passing the bill. Now, I want to introduce a good friend of not only mine, but of all the residents of Cliffside Park. In literally 6 months, Governor Phil Murphy, while working with the Democratic legislature, has accomplished more than many governors achieve in their full terms. The governor ran on a stronger, fairer New Jersey, and he certainly delivered on those promises. Under Governor Murphy, workers have been treated better, the tax structure has become more fair, and the education has become a high priority for the state of New Jersey. I am proud to introduce my friend, our governor, the Honorable Phil Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Phil. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. There's nothing I could say that's going to live up to the introduction Tom just gave me, so I ought to just throw the towel in right now. It is a real pleasure to be here and to be back, I have to say, in Cliffside Park to usher in a new era of fair and equitable school funding for New Jersey. Tom, I want to thank you for that introduction and the welcome to your community. I want to thank the superintendent as well for welcoming us here to Cliffside Park School number 3. And for all of you and the educators here, NJEA leadership in the front row, but many educators in this room who are here and including in this district who come in every day to do the very best they can for our children, to thank all of you. I'm honored to be joined by Senate President Steve Sweeney, for whom I know modernizing our school funding formula has been a long-time goal. The Senate President also knows the impact this measure will have right here in Cliffside Park. After all, he chose this community to host one of the hearings of the Senate Select Committee on School Funding Fairness, which he created last year, and that work led us in many respects to today. So Steve, I thank you for traveling here today to show your commitments to the kids and families of Cliffside Park. I know this is right around the corner for you, so it was an easy one, so thank you. Many of the dignitaries were already referred to. Joan Voss got missed, freeholder Joan Voss, who's an educator in her own right, by the way. And when Joan is upset with me, she speaks to me in her teacher's voice, so I know it's serious. But I also want to reiterate, we're in their district, Senate Budget Committee Chair Paul Sarlo, my dear friend, and his assembly mates, Gary Scher and Clinton Calabrese, who are here. They were mentioned, but I want to reiterate, thank you for having us in your backyard. And I want to also give a particular shout out to another friend and advocate who chairs the Education Committee in the Senate. She was referred to, but I want to underscore it again. Senator Teresa Ruiz is with us today, so honored. She appears to be standing beside Messrs. Logano and Tedesco, who are also acknowledged, but it's great to see you all. I want to also thank in absentia the Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin, who was a sponsor in this bill as well. I also have to thank, he's going to speak in a minute after the Senate President, I also have to recognize our terrific Commissioner of Education, Dr. Lamont Repillette, to my right. Ensuring that our public schools each receive their fair share of state funding is not a novel idea. It is something that governors, lawmakers, and policy wonks and advocates and parents have long worked for and hoped for. This effort in New Jersey goes back more than 4 decades. Certainly, New Jersey took a tremendous step in the year 2008 with the signing of the School Funding Reform Act, the only system for school funding upheld as constitutional by the New Jersey Supreme Court. The SFRA has also been held up as a national model for student-driven and community-driven funding that worked from the bottom up and was based not on zip codes, but on the unique needs and characteristics of students. But that did not mean that it was perfect. When I ran for governor, I said time and again in town halls across our state that our system of school funding, while sound at its core, needed to be modernized. Over time, we saw districts which underwent great change and experienced increased financial stress left underserved by the SFRA. Communities like Cliffside Park. After all, a lot has changed in New Jersey in the 10 years between 2008 and 2018. We need to make sure the means of funding public education, the single largest investment in the budget, and among the most important investments made by state government, works for today and tomorrow, not just yesterday. Specifically, that means ensuring that each district receives the amount of state aid determined by the formula contained in the SFRA, which uses objective criteria, such as students who live in poverty, special needs students, bilingual students, among other factors. In the budget I just signed a couple of weeks ago, in which the Commissioner and the Senate President and the Assembly Speaker and the lawmakers here with us today worked so hard to get done, we are making a historic reinvestment in our public schools and in our future. By fiscal year 2025, every district will receive the appropriate level of aid under the school funding formula. Instead of only being funded at 51% of adequacy as it was last year, Cliffside Park, by example, will be on a clear path to 100%. And now we can see why the Senate President chose to hold his hearing here last year. For the students, the educators, and parents here in Cliffside Park, that's $1,032,035 in new school aid for this upcoming school year. And as the superintendent noted, this funding will go a long way for the district's staffing needs as well as its special education and ESL programming. The budget is the first step in getting us to fully and fairly funding our public schools, whether it be here in Cliffside Park or anywhere else in New Jersey. And now today, we're going to keep moving the ball downfield by instituting the first broad reforms to the SFRA in a decade to ensure these investments are fairly and equitably getting to our school districts. In addition, I am also signing legislation today to empower Jersey City to implement a 1% payroll tax to help ensure proper funding for their schools, shielding property taxpayers for having to shoulder the complete burden. Together, we're bringing school funding in line with the realities that all our districts face, and that's what fairness is. Before we get to the signing, I want to ask a couple more folks to come on up and say a few words. I'd first like to welcome Senate President Steve Sweeney.
Thank you. Thank you. I really want to, there's a lot of people I really do want to thank. I'm going to start with thanking my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Sarlo, Ruiz, and Lagana. We were here a few years ago, Governor. Thank you for remembering that. And we went to many places throughout the state. So in some ways, people are saying, well, you're far away from home. But it wasn't about at home. It was about the entire state. It was about every single child, making sure that every single child was treated fairly. And that's what we've gotten here today. And I want to thank you for your willingness and your honesty in keeping your word, as you said, in fixing this. It was way too long. You know, I told the governor, these people from Chesterfield and from Kingsway are going to haunt you, right? And I said, and if I tell them not to come, they're coming anyway. I learned that a while ago. You can ask Governor Christie. They chased him for 7 years or 8 years too. But this is just a big win for all the kids in the state. I want to thank Dr. Lavender, the superintendent of Kingsway, Dr. Green, the superintendent at Newton, and so many others. This is so volatile when you're trying to fix a wrong. It's never easy. It's always difficult because those who have, they have, and those who don't. So this was one hell of a battle. And I want to thank my colleagues in the legislature because this was no easy task. In fact, this was probably one of the toughest ones that we've ever done. You know, the enrollment caps and the hold harmless aid were intended to be temporary, and they were done for all the right reasons. The legislature didn't make a mistake when they did it. They did it because we didn't want to hurt kids. The problem was we couldn't undo it once it was done, until now. It's been a long effort. It's been an exhausting effort. But to know that in Bergen County, county executive, I think it's the top one in the state, getting 18% more funding and up to $43 million more. That's pretty good for the taxpayers of Bergen County, I would think. And this started out with a process, and I had a bill, and some people know from time to time I can be a hardhead. But Governor Murphy and Speaker Coughlin, who's not here, who's a phenomenal partner, the Speaker, got us to a point where we could agree to a bill that finally starts the process. Because every year, you know what we hear? Oh, you can't do it this year. Can't do it this year. Well, guess what? We won't hear that anymore. I want to thank Governor Murphy for his commitment to all the children in the state, fixing a wrong and moving the state forward. And we do have unfinished business. We need to fix special education in the state. We haven't forgot that. That is an absolute priority. And we got to continue to expand, I know, Senator Ruiz's passion of pre-K till every child gets pre-K in the state. So, Governor, we have some things that need to be finished, and I look forward to working with you on them. Thank you.
I echo the Senate President's statements about this is a journey. This is a great moment, a great step, but it is a step in a long journey. I'll take pre-K for an example. That's going to take us a number of years to achieve our aspirations, but we made a major step in the budget this year. This today on school funding is part of a 7-year journey to get to the right place. That's the responsible journey I think that we all collectively think we need to be on. I couldn't agree more with the Senate President's statement about special education and making sure that gets to the right place. So we're not spiking the football yet. Before we actually take a couple of questions and sign the bills, I want to ask our terrific Commissioner of Education to come on up and say a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lamont Repillette.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Governor Murphy, Senate President Sweeney, and Speaker Coughlin, and all the sponsors of the Senate Bill 2 for their foresight and diligence in advancing this legislation. We've been talking over the last several months about the need to modernize and update New Jersey's school funding formula. Even before he was elected, Governor Murphy was clear that New Jersey students and schools deserve better. Today, that promise has been delivered. As I've traveled around the state, 21 counties, I've heard from my superintendent colleagues, teachers, parents, and more importantly, students that have told me that the impact that years of flat funding has had on them. I can't count the number of times I was told that a small amount of funding would be enough to revive a critical program for our students in the state of New Jersey. The fiscal year 19 budget, together with S2, creates new opportunities for our schools and our students. As a former superintendent and educator, I know firsthand what it was like to work in a district with changes in demographics and student needs under a static formula that did not evolve during these circumstances. But with today's signing, we have now taken 2 giant steps towards fully and fairly funding our school districts. This play lays the groundwork for fixes to inequalities that have built up over the last several years, with continued investments like this historic funding included in the 2019 budget. Districts will finally be able to bring back those most important educational programs for our students. By eliminating state aid growth limits and equalizing funding for districts that have been underfunded for years, we are charting a new path for our schools and setting the stage for our students and their continued and future academic success in the great state of New Jersey. Thank you.
Just saying on the merits, a little warm in here. We'll take a couple of questions from the press, and then we're going to sign this historic bill. Michael.
Can't hear. We'll give it to you, Michael.
We'll give that to you in a bit. I didn't realize it was a two-part.
What does this mean for
Abbott Schools, and I'll let the commissioner come in and correct me if I'm wrong. This has really a differing impact. The biggest impact is in Jersey City. And I mentioned earlier that I'm going to sign a companion bill that will allow Jersey City or give them the authority to raise a 1% payroll tax. In fact, and I'm using them as the example because they're the biggest, the biggest of the districts. I think the impact is less than 1% of the state aid under this bill, and that payroll tax will more than make up for that. See.
Governor, the Attorney General sent out a letter to the municipal prosecutors across the state and county prosecutors regarding marijuana, low-level marijuana crime offenses. Do you endorse this step? Should they stop, or should municipalities stop making minor marijuana arrests during this period of time? And what would you like to see the final product be?
Okay, so I'll let the Attorney General answer the question on that letter, but I'll tell you what we want the final product to be. And we were just doing some business walking in here today, and that is legalization of adult use marijuana sooner than later. The Senate President is leading that. I'm all in. I think the Assembly, Speaker of the General Assembly is all in. We're not suggesting it's easy, but we're committed to doing really two things. One is the bigger lift is adult use legalization, and the other is making sure that we have legislatively continue to open up the medical marijuana regime in the state. We've already done a lot by executive action, which is great, but we have some more tweaks that we need to accomplish legislatively. So that's the end state that we're committed to. Do you want to add anything to that, Steve? Or?
We're working.
Do you endorse the Attorney General's move on it?
Again, I'm going to let the Attorney General refer to that. Just as a general conceptual matter, I'm not a big decriminalization fan. On the surface, it is intoxicating. You think it's a step in the right direction. It actually leaves the business in the hands of the bad guys. It's got, your kids are exposed. It's not regulated. It's not taxed. So I'll leave the specifics of that to the Attorney General, but that's a conceptual answer. Matt.
In the bill, what do you say to the towns that have a 2% tax hike because of this bill? What do you say?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a 2% tax hike. That's a decision that's going to get made locally within each jurisdiction. And that's going to depend on whether, where their funding is relative to where they should be and relative to the state aid. They have within their power to find the money, for instance, in the education side of the budget, which is just over half of a typical property tax bill, and find money from the other half potentially to offset that. So that's a decision that's going to get made locally, and it will depend on the specific dynamics of the communities involved. Please.
Your response to the proposed amendment to the state's constitution that would take away some of your power when it comes to the budget and to revenue estimates. Does this move against you or for or against you?
This is the first I'm hearing of this. I'm kidding. That was okay. I don't want to. This guy and I see a lot of things similarly, as we've said time and time again, both in private and in public. We were doing business walking up here. We have overwhelmingly shared passions as two Irish kids growing up as in hardscrabble Democratic family circumstances. This is not one we agree on. I'm all for a better process of forecasting revenues, but the certification, which the way it's been for 71 years, in my humble opinion, has to be and should continue to be the person who's at the top of the ballot, the chief executive officer of the state. That's part of the responsibility. It's a checks and balances reality that's worked really well. I don't take it personally, but I don't agree with it. Do you want to add anything to that? Or?
No, we're at the same place.
Yep. So. Do we sign these? Do I have your permission? Yeah. Let's go. This is up to next year. Are you good?
Clinton Gary.
Hi, front row there. The money shot. Could somebody turn the heat up? Joan, help us out. Senate President Steve Sweeney, right for the home. Education Chair, Senator Teresa Ruiz. Congratulations. Budget Chair, we're in his backyard, Senator Paul Sarlo. We're in his backyard, Assemblyman Gary Sherrick. Gary? The only Calabrese in the building, Assemblyman. Bergen County Executive Jim Tedesco. Jim, you here? Right down, Jim. Congratulations.
Thank you, Doug.
I'll see you on Thursday. Here, Tom Calabrese. Where are you, Tom?
Right here, Doug.
Come on, man. Donna Calabrese, principal. Cliffside Park School of My tower singer last night. I love that. Superintendent Mike Romagino. Commissioner of Education, Dr. Lamont Raphael. This is now the law of the land. Allowing Jersey City to do the 1% payroll tax. And I'm going to give these pens to Assembly Majority Leader Lou Greenwald, who I don't think is with us, and Senator Linda Greenstein. Mike? Both? All right. Also the law.
It's where you take everybody. I shoot everyone. I'm telling you.
It's okay, Jack, on Sundays, yeah.
Mayor Bellucci, stand up and take a bow. They're longest standing mayor in Bergen. Come on.
Look at you.
Thank you, everybody. Everyone to the pool.
Yeah. He's really killing us. We got no air.